On July 8, 2014, something happened at Varna Airport in Bulgaria that no one has been able to explain. A German tourist named Lars Mittank suddenly abandoned his suitcase inside the terminal, bolted out the doors, scaled a high fence, and vanished into the nearby woods. He's never been seen since, and his bizarre disappearance still puzzles investigators to this day. A few days earlier, Lars had been vacationing with friends at Golden Sands, a lively beach resort known for cheap drinks and wild parties, especially among young German tourists. The trip had been typical: sun, football, clubbing. Nothing out of the ordinary, but everything changed after a fight broke out at a nearby McDonald's. Lars was a fan of the German team Werder Bremen, crossed paths with a group of rival Bayern Munich supporters. Words were exchanged, then fists. One punch was enough to rupture Lars's eardrum. His friends urged him to see a doctor. The doctor prescribed him antibiotics cefuroxime 500 to prevent infection and warned him against flying until his ear healed. Lars decided to stay behind for a few days while his friends returned home. But they never saw him again. Alone in a foreign country, Lars checked into a cheap hotel near the airport. But his behavior started changing almost immediately. He called his mother in a panic, saying strange men were following him trying to rob or even kill him. He begged her to cancel his credit card. Later, he texted her asking what the antibiotics he'd been given actually did, as if he didn't trust them. Hotel security footage showed Lars pacing the lobby, acting jittery. At one point, he hid in an elevator. Another time, he vanished into the night for an hour before coming back to his room by morning. His fear seemed to reach a breaking point. He took a cab to Varna Airport, texting his mother on the way. His phone battery was almost dead. She told him to see the airport doctor before flying. Whatever Lars saw or thought he saw, it sent him into a panic. He stood up, whispered, "I don't want to die here," and ran. Airport cameras caught him sprinting through the terminal, out into the parking lot, across the grounds, even climbing over barbed wire before disappearing into the forest beyond. He left behind everything: his bags, his passport, the antibiotics, and any trace of where he went. Despite exhaustive searches, police found nothing. No leads, no evidence, not even a confirmed sighting. Some believe he was attacked or kidnapped. Others think he suffered a sudden psychotic episode triggered by his head injury or possibly by the medication itself. Over the years, reports of supposed sightings popped up, including one man found in Brazil with no memory of his identity. But none turned out to be Lars. On the night of February 9, 2004, a 21-year-old nursing student named Maura Murray left her dorm at the University of Massachusetts Amherst and drove straight into a mystery that would baffle investigators and armchair detectives for decades. That Monday afternoon around 3:30 p.m., Maura emailed her professors, claiming there had been a death in the family and she'd be away for a week, but there was no death. Her family later confirmed no one had passed away. She then packed her belongings, textbooks, clothes, personal items, and withdrew $280 from an ATM, almost all the money she had. Security footage showed her alone at the machine, calm and composed. Then she bought alcohol, vodka, Baileys, and a box of wine. No one knows for sure if she was planning a trip or running from something. By 7 p.m., she was spotted on a rural stretch of Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire, over 100 miles from her campus. Maura's car, a black 1996 Saturn, was found crashed into a snowbank. The front end was damaged, the windshield cracked, but she wasn't inside. A nearby resident said he spoke briefly with Maura. She seemed shaken, but said she was fine and had already called for roadside assistance. The neighbor offered help. She declined. By the time police arrived, less than 10 minutes later, Maura was gone. The car was locked. Her belongings, including the alcohol and some personal items, were still inside. But her debit card, cell phone, and keys were missing. There were no tracks in the snow leading away from the scene. No witnesses, no confirmed sightings. It was like if she'd simply vanished. For days, search teams scoured the area. Dogs, helicopters, thermal imaging, they found nothing. What happened in those crucial minutes between Maura's crash and the arrival of police? The theories piled up. Some say she walked into the woods to escape and succumb to the cold. But cadaver dogs found nothing. Others believe she staged the crash to disappear on purpose, starting a new life somewhere else. But why? She left behind family, friends, and an open future. Some even suspect foul play, that a passerby abducted her before police arrived. Her internet searches in the days prior only deepened the mystery. She looked up directions to Vermont, booked accommodations at a resort, and searched about the effects of alcohol on pregnancy. Was she hiding a secret or just making unrelated plans? Years passed, leads surfaced, sightings, anonymous tips, but nothing ever stuck. In 2006, a rusty knife was turned in by someone claiming it came from a family member potentially connected to Maura's disappearance, but it led nowhere. In 2017, ground-penetrating radar showed a suspicious spot in a nearby basement, sparking a new search. Yet 2 decades later, the trail is as cold as the New Hampshire night she vanished. What really happened to Maura Murray? Her disappearance remains one of America's most haunting unsolved cases. In March of 1998, a 23-year-old woman named Amy Lynn Bradley boarded a cruise ship with her family and never made it back. What followed were years of chilling sightings and disturbing possibilities that have left people wondering, did Amy vanish on her own, or was she taken? Amy was on vacation with her parents and brother, aboard the Royal Caribbean cruise ship Rhapsody of the Seas, heading through the Caribbean. They left port on March 21st. By all accounts, Amy was in good spirits, laughing, dancing at the ship's nightclub, even hanging out with the ship's band. But sometime between 5:30 and 6 a.m. the next morning, Amy disappeared. Her father had seen her asleep on the balcony around 5:30 a.m. By 6 a.m. she was gone. Her shoes, cigarettes, even her ID were left behind in the cabin. The ship was at sea. There were no signs she fell overboard. And yet, Amy was nowhere to be found. At first, cruise staff suggested maybe she'd gone for a swim. But Amy was a strong swimmer, and her family insisted she'd never go off alone like that. Searches on the ship turned up nothing. Neither did Coast Guard searches of the surrounding waters. But then, the sightings started. Over the next few years, people claimed to have seen Amy in places like Curacao and Barbados. One witness said she was at a brothel, looking scared and begging for help. Another claimed a woman matching her description approached them in a restroom, whispering that her name was Amy, before a man came in and pulled her away. A Canadian sailor even reported seeing her in a Caribbean brothel, days before she vanished again. But none of the sightings were ever confirmed, and none of them led to Amy coming home. To this day, no one knows exactly what happened on that cruise ship. Speculation's still echoing. Did Amy fall victim to human trafficking? Was she abducted right from under everyone's nose? Or is there a darker story no one's uncovered yet? All we know is that Amy Lynn Bradley boarded a ship with her family and never came back. Brian Schaefer was a promising medical student at Ohio State University, but on April 1, 2006, he walked into a bar and never came out. Nearly 2 decades later, his disappearance remains one of the most puzzling cold cases in American history. That night, Brian met up with friends to celebrate the start of spring break. They bar-hopped along High Street, eventually ending up at a place called the Ugly Tuna Saloona. Surveillance footage confirmed he entered the bar at 1:15 a.m., but he was never seen leaving. Police reviewed all surveillance footage from the bar's 2 exits. One was heavily monitored. The other led to a construction zone, dirty, dangerous, and not a likely escape route, especially for someone dressed in jeans and flip-flops. Despite exhaustive searches and national media attention, no trace of Brian was ever found. No phone records, no credit card activity, no witnesses. On the other hand, Brian's friends and family were devastated. His father, Randy, led tireless search efforts until his own tragic death in 2008. Some speculated that Brian faked his disappearance to start a new life. Others believe he was the victim of foul play. Yet authorities found no evidence to support either theory. But one eerie detail remains. Brian's cell phone rang for months after his disappearance, sometimes even connecting, but it was later chalked up to a technical glitch. Sadly, to this day, Brian Schaefer remains missing. The night of May 3, 2007, a night that started like any other for the McCann family, turned into a parent's worst nightmare. This is the story of Madeleine McCann, a case that captivated the world and remains unsolved to this day. Gary and Kate McCann, both physicians from the UK, were on vacation with their 3 children at the Ocean Club Resort in Praia da Luz, Portugal. On the evening of May 3rd, they left their children asleep in their apartment while they dined at a nearby tapas bar. Friends and family checked on the children periodically, but at around 10 p.m., Kate McCann made a routine check and discovered that 3-year-old Madeleine was missing. The Portuguese police were quickly notified, and a massive search operation was launched. Despite extensive efforts, no trace of Madeleine was found. The media frenzy that followed turned the case into a global sensation, with headlines splashed across newspapers and news channels worldwide. Over the years, many suspects and leads have emerged. Early on, attention focused on Robert Maura, a local resident who was eventually cleared of any involvement. The so-called Tapas 7, friends of the McCanns who were dining with them that night, also came under scrutiny but were never charged. Gary and Kate McCann faced intense media scrutiny and were even named as suspects by Portuguese police at one point. However, they were eventually cleared, and their relentless campaign to find their daughter has kept the case in the public eye. In 2020, German prosecutors identified a new suspect, a convicted sex offender named Christian Bruckner. Despite extensive investigations, no concrete evidence has been found to link him definitively to Madeleine's disappearance. The case remains open and the search for answers continues. The disappearance of Madeleine McCann is a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring pain of uncertainty. As the years pass, the hope for answers remains, and the world continues to watch and wait for the truth to be revealed.